Okay, so today we're going to start with a vegetable stock. So vegetable stock is a good base recipe. You can use it in sort of any soups or polenta dishes. Basically anything that you're going to be using water, what you're using in the dish, by using vegetable stock you're going to bring more flavour into it. So we're going to make just a traditional one today along the lines of sort of ones that use in Mediterranean sort of food. So I'll be using Italian sort of herbs in there. If you were to use it for any sort of Asian dishes, you can just change by using the herbs. Instead of the herbs, you'd use things like ginger, coriander, galangal, lemongrass if you had those sort of things. So I've got my pot of water onto the boil already. I'm just going to add the carrots in first. So obviously the vegetables just roughly chopped. The vegetable stocks also a good way to use up your scraps. If you've got little offcuts of bits and pieces, you can always throw them into the vegetable stock. It's one of those sort of things you can have in the fridge too for a couple of days. If you know you're going to be making a couple of soups, or if you're going to be making sort of quinoa dishes, millet dishes, things that steam the water. A lot of rice dishes also, quite good for vegetable stock. You see in all the supermarkets things, you have the vegetable bouillon, the powder mixes. This is basically what a vegetable stock is replacing. Celery also, roughly chopped, and it goes. I've got tomatoes. The traditional vegetables that you do use is for vegetable stock is carrot, celery, tomato, often onion is used, but there's many varieties of things you can put in there, but you just have to make sure you're not going to use anything that's going to make it become cloudy. So you wouldn't put things like eggplant in there. Things like zucchini would be okay. But basically, these are the classical vegetables here we're using. And traditionally, you put what's called a bucagani in there, which is a mixture of bay leaves, peppercorn, thyme leaves, and sometimes parsley stalks. Traditionally, they wrap it up in a little bit of cloth and dot it in, but as we're straining it, it doesn't really matter. So I've got some peppercorns here, straight in. If you don't have the whole peppercorns, you can always just crack the pepper in. I've got some parsley stalks. And I've got bay leaves. Lucky enough to have a fresh bay tree at home, so pop those in. If you don't have the fresh, dry is fine. So we've got the thyme leaves. And as I'm going to be using some of these herbs later on today, I'm just going to pick them and put them aside and use these stalks. The stalks also have quite a lot of flavour, and it's quite good to be using everything we can, get the most out of it. A couple of extra leaves go in, that's fine. And as a youngster working in a restaurant, this is one of the first jobs I spend a lot of time doing, making the various stocks in the kitchen. Well, a good quality stock is a fantastic way to sort of make that difference between ordinary tasting food and sort of a bit more exciting, just getting that bit more flavour in there. So basically we let this come to the boil now. We don't want to cover it all anymore at this point. And a little bit of froth will probably come up that we'll remove as we go. We'll skim that off. And a vegetable stock, you generally would cook for anywhere between half an hour to about 45-50 minutes simmering. But any longer than that and it's going to start to go cloudy. So the idea is that you want to have a nice clear sort of colour to it with just a slightly sort of golden tinge to it. So we'll let that come up to the boil and we'll see how it looks from there. Okay, so as you can see now we've come to the boil. You can see there's a little bit of froth coming up there on the surface. So whenever you're making soup, stock, anything with beans, lentils, anytime you see froth basically coming when you're boiling something, you always want to take it off because that's impurities that's coming up out of the food that you need to remove, keeping it as pure as possible. So best thing to do is just turn it down to a simmer so it's not rapidly boiling. Just place your ladle in and just gently move the ladle, making circles from the inside out. All the froth will go to the edge of the pot. There's not too much here, but just a little bit. And you just gently try to cup it off. Whenever you make something like this, you really want to go for that clarity in it. If you leave the froth just to boil away in there, it's going to go cloudy. And also it's the same reason why you're not going to put the lid on after this point too. You just want to keep it simmering gently without a lid so as to stop it from going cloudy. So that looks about it, not too much froth there to move off. So I've turned it down to a simmer now. And this will just cook for another sort of 30-35 minutes. Then we'll come back to it and we'll strain it and it'll be good to use. Okay, so as you can see we've been cooking down about 40 minutes now because I've just continued to remove any scum that's come up to the surface. And now we'll just simply strain it off and it'll be ready to use. So I'll strain it just into a clear bowl so you get an idea of what it looks like. So as you can see there, it's got a nice sort of golden colour. It's got quite a good clarity to it. You do get a little bit of sort of vegetable fibres in there. And if you do want extreme clarity for making a particular soup like a consommé where you're looking for that really fine finish, then you can put it through muslin cloth also and that'll give it a finer finish. But otherwise this is ready to go. It's fine to use for your soups, any bases, for anything that you'd normally use a bouillon or powder mixture, you can always use this one. And it'll keep in the fridge for about 4 or 5 days. So nice, simple, easy to use vegetable stock.